It was just announced that in only 6 months, about 70% of the entire mainline Pokemon games will be cut off from this series' current modern titles, breaking a precedent that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have set for the last 20 years. You see, for as long as anyone can remember, Pokemon has done something almost no other gaming franchise has managed to do, and that is keep your collection alive. And of course they have, because their catch line since 1998 has been gotta catch them all. And for the last like 2 decades, all of those Pokemon that they encouraged you to collect can pretty much be transferred all the way up to the latest titles without much of a fuss, as long as you have all the required hardware and games and software, which means a Pokemon you caught on a Game Boy Advance on the school bus in 2003 can be transferred through multiple generations, multiple consoles, and eventually onto the Pokemon Home app today on your smartphone or your Switch or Switch 2. But on February 25th, 2027, that chain is going to break. Pokemon Bank is shutting down permanently, and when it does, the only official bridge connecting a huge portion of Pokemon's history to the modern games disappears with it. And look, Pokemon Bank is 13 years old. The 3DS itself has been discontinued for a while now. So really, nobody should be shocked that this service wasn't going to run forever. But what is surprising is that Pokemon has announced no replacement. So if you have an old starter Pokemon, a shiny you caught as a kid, or a rare event distribution Pokemon, or literally anything else sitting on one of these older game cartridges, you now have a hard deadline to decide whether you want to bring it forward or not. Because after this deadline passes, there will never be another chance, and really this isn't an easy decision to make either. You can choose to keep your Pokemon on a physical cartridge forever, or you could bring it up to Pokemon Home, which effectively puts that Pokemon on one of Pokemon's servers, which we now know will eventually get shut down. But the craziest part is that the timing of this announcement gets especially interesting when you look at what Pokemon is looking to sell you next. So let's jump right in, folks, and see what exactly did Pokemon just announce yesterday. This was posted on Pokemon's official website, Pokemon Bank End of Service. Pokemon Bank, a Nintendo 3DS application that lets players deposit or withdraw Pokemon they have befriended in Pokemon titles on that system from online boxes, will be ending service on Thursday, February 25th, 2027 at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. As a result, transferring Pokemon from Pokemon Bank to Pokemon Home will also no longer be possible. If you have Pokemon stored in Pokemon Bank that you wish to carry over, please move them to Pokemon Home prior to Pokemon Bank's end of service. Please note, Pokemon Bank is not currently available for download. Okay, and really quick, I just want to thank everybody who has been supporting the channel lately by liking the videos, using the hype feature. It really means a lot. And a lot of times I bring Tiger on here because, one, she just jumps up while I'm filming, but also because I know you guys really like her, but she is deep asleep in a cat nap right now and I don't want to bother her, so I'm just going to share with you guys a couple of pictures of Tiger. And I know if she were awake, she would tell you guys that if you made it this far into the video, you probably should leave a like on this one as well. What exactly does this mean? Okay, well, first of all, Pokemon Bank's end of service effectively means that if you have Pokemon inside Pokemon Bank and you don't transfer them to Pokemon Home and you just leave them there in Pokemon Bank, they will be deleted permanently on February 25th, 2027. Okay, you have 6 months to make that move, otherwise they're gone forever. And this is actually kind of weird because when you look at the way they word this in the first paragraph, it says they let players deposit or withdraw Pokemon they have befriended in Pokemon titles, right? And this is kind of the thing that makes this entire situation bizarre, right? It's not the fact that they're ending a 13-year-old service. Everyone knew eventually it would go away. It's the fact that there was a precedent there for the last, 20 years that Pokemon from older generations could be moved to newer generations. That started all the way back on the Game Boy Advance. You can move your Pokemon to the DS games, and then from DS to 3DS, 3DS to Switch, and that's the whole chain. And the reason that that precedent was so cherished by the fans of the games is because of the word that they use right here, befriended. Pokemon since day one has spent all of their effort and energy convincing you that Pokemon in your games are not just merely bits of data. They are your friends, they're your companions, you go on adventures with them, and as kids we all believed that, right? And they've kept up that facade for the last 2+ decades, okay? And one of the biggest components of that is like, look, if you care about your Pokemon, don't worry, you can transfer them through all the different generations since generation 3 and beyond, all the way up to the modern hardware, because we understand, we the Pokemon company understand that you have befriended these Pokemon. This is your collection, right? Gotta catch them all. You've been catching them all. And so it was Pokemon's sort of position that they're going to support those games for as long as possible. And frankly, it's insane that they've done that, right? It is actually truly impressive, and credit where credit is due. They've been able to keep this going for so long, and it's kind of been something that the Pokemon fan base has taken for granted, right? But on February 25th, that all ends, and all of a sudden the word befriended feels a little bit weird, right? It's like, hey, you know, we know that we spent the last 25 years convincing you that these bits of data are your friends, but we're going to delete your friends if you don't make the move over to the latest stuff, right? And that just kind of is a little bit jarring, because that's the corporation speaking, right? It's not the childhood friend that's speaking, it's the big company that makes billions of dollars and is the owner of the most valuable entertainment franchise in human history. And like I said before, part of the reason, not the whole reason, okay, but part of the reason why this system is ending has to do with what Pokemon wants to sell you next, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to quickly explain what exactly Pokemon Bank is, because I know a lot of you who watch my channel might not be diehard Pokemon fans, or at least maybe you didn't follow the entire lineage from start to finish, so you don't necessarily know what Pokemon Bank is, okay? Well, Pokemon Bank is an absolutely critical service that Pokemon has been supporting for like 13 years at this point, that allows you to transfer Pokemon all the way back from generation 3 on the Game Boy Advance up to the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 and the latest entries in the series. And the way that you would do this is you would take your Game Boy Advance cartridge, right? You would take the literal cartridge that you played on the bus in 2004, you would plug it into the Game Boy slot of a Nintendo DS, and then in the DS cartridge slot you would have a Pokemon game like Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, whatever the case might be, right? And via the PAL Park feature in generation 4, you could actually transfer Pokemon from the Game Boy Advance slot up into the Pokemon game in your DS slot, effectively bridging the gap between Gen 3 and Gen 4. And then once your Pokemon was in Diamond, Pearl, or Platinum, you could Poke transfer it to Black 2 and White 2, effectively putting it on Gen 5. And then once it was on Black 2 or White 2, you could use the Poke Transporter service to put it onto Pokemon Bank, effectively bridging the connection between the DS and the 3DS. And then once it was on the 3DS, through the use of games like Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you could move those same Pokemon through Pokemon Bank to Pokemon Home. And Pokemon Home is the current modern servers that hold all of the current generation Pokemon, right? You can even download Pokemon Home on your literal smartphone because it connects to Pokemon Go as well, right? And so look, this process is convoluted, it's complicated, it requires that you have multiple pieces of hardware that are no longer supported, they're no longer sold, they are outdated. It requires services like Pokemon Bank that have been online for 13 years, and it's a lengthy process. It's not perfect, but it is possible. And that's what I think a lot of Pokemon fans really valued here, because it showed Pokemon and Game Freak's commitment to supporting your collection, because you've got to catch them all, and you've been catching them all since 1999, right? But now with Pokemon Bank being shut down, that link effectively severs the older Pokemon games from the newer Pokemon games, and effectively what you're losing is access to all of the generations 1 through like 7 basically, right? And you might say, okay, well, how are we losing access to Gen 1 when you just said it was Game Boy Advance and up, right? So that doesn't include Red, Blue, Yellow, it doesn't include Gold, Silver, Crystal, except it does because those games were available on the eShop on the 3DS. So if you bought Gold, Silver, Crystal or Red, Blue, Yellow on the 3DS, those versions of the game were compatible with Pokemon Bank. So even Pokemon from generations 1 and 2, the original games, were able to be obtained and transferred all the way up to Pokemon Pokemon Home. Now, some of that has been alleviated with the other announcement that they just came out with, which is that FireRed and LeafGreen are going to have Pokemon Home support this October, which, I mean, it's about freaking time, boys. I mean, they announced that these games would have home support back when the games were revealed, basically, which was like what, February, March, right? Like, these games have been out for months now, and they're only going to get Pokemon Home support in October, which is crazy. But either way, FireRed and LeafGreen being on the Switch eShop has alleviated some of that pressure, right? But that doesn't erase the fact that about 70% of all the mainline Pokemon games are going to be severed from being transferred to the latest and greatest games in the franchise, which breaks the precedent that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have had for over a decade now, really 2 decades since Ruby and Sapphire came out. And let me just restate this for a second, okay? Because I want to be very clear. It's not crazy that they're shutting down a 13-year-old service for a handheld that hasn't been supported in years now. Like, they ended production of the 3DS in 2020, so that was 6 years ago. So it's like unprecedented that they were even supporting this for this long to begin with, right? So again, shutting down the service isn't necessarily the thing that's shocking here, right? I mean, everyone who supports the physical media side of gaming knows that the problem with the digital side is that servers get shut down, right? I've been talking about this on the channel for like a year at this point, but servers get shut down. You will eventually lose anything that you buy digitally. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? And now is the time for Pokemon Bank to be shut down, and all the Pokemon that you have there are gone forever. They're going to be literally deleted. Pokemon is literally deleting your Pokemon. Like, that is not clickbait. That's not like some crazy, you know, fantasy that like the grifters are coming up with, right? Like, that's objectively what's happening. If you don't move them through Bank, they're getting deleted. But it's not the ending of service that's the crazy part. It's the ending of the precedent, right? If the Pokemon Company and Game Freak came out and said, hey, we're shutting down Pokemon Bank, it's like this weird old system that like barely anybody uses anymore besides the hardcore players, so like we're gonna get rid of it, but look, don't worry, we're gonna set up this connection where you can just connect your 3DS to your Wi-Fi network, and if you connect your phone to the Wi-Fi network, there's gonna be a way through Pokemon Home to just move the Pokemon straight over, right? Like, if there was a way to do that, okay, fine. Or if they released a little piece of hardware where you could literally plug your 3DS cartridge into a cartridge reader and then USB-C connect it to your Switch, right? Or Switch 2, whatever, and then boom, you could literally transfer through a cable, just like we used to do back in the playground in 1999, right? You could transfer your Pokemon through a cable from the cartridge reader directly into your Pokemon Home on the Switch. That would have been a celebrated achievement, right? Like, that would have been, oh my god, no longer do you need a server for Pokemon Bank. You can literally just move them right over with a cable. Like, that would have solved the problem immediately. It would have kept the precedent, it would have held the chain together, and it would have continued to make it possible to move Pokemon from old generations to the mainline stuff without having to rely on having a 3DS that happened to have Pokemon Bank, which I still have, by the way. I gotta log in there and double check to see if my stuff is on there, but that's the part that people are upset about, right? It's not that they're shutting down a 13-year-old service for a console that hasn't been manufactured in 6 years. It's the breaking of the precedent without any sort of solution. But wait, there is kind of a solution. They will sell you a solution. We'll talk about that in just a second. But some of you might be thinking, well, like, what's the big deal, right? They're giving you a 6-month notice. So if you really care, if you really want to move your Pokemon from your old cartridges, you got 6 months, right? Like, that's plenty of time. And it's like, yeah, I guess so, right? But there's a bunch of people that aren't going to hear this news. They haven't been playing Pokemon for the last couple of years. They don't know much about this stuff. They're working their job as an accountant, okay, and they're dealing with bills, and they just had a kid, so they're like raising a family, and they're just outside the Pokemon bubble for now. But they might come back in a couple of years and say, hey, I've got this shiny Pokemon that I soft reset for, or that I, you know, had a 1 in 8,100 chance of obtaining, and I got it with raw shiny odds back in the day, you know, my freaking Golem from Diamond version. All right, that's a real story, by the way. I literally just found one. It was literally at the beginning of the game. It just boom right there. They're gonna come back to the franchise at some point and realize those Pokemon are stuck on those cartridges forever. And this is especially important for like event distribution Pokemon, right? Like, imagine you were in Japan back in the early 2000s and you were able to go to an in-person distribution event and you got your hands on whatever the Pokemon might have been at the time, right? Deoxys or something, or Mew or whatever it was, and you come back in a year from now and you're like, oh man, like I have no way of getting that off my old cartridge. Like, that's literally stuck there forever. And the answer is yes, right? And that might be for the better, and maybe I'll touch on that in just a second, but let me quickly touch on one of the things that I really wanted to talk about here, which is that Pokemon isn't necessarily leaving you high and dry when it comes to accessing certain Pokemon from certain regions, right? One of the biggest things is Generation 3, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. There's a couple of ways to play through Gen 3, whether it's on the original cartridges or it's through Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, which are phenomenal remakes, by the way. Absolutely incredible. Some of the best games in the entire franchise, if I'm being honest with you guys. The end game flying around on Latios, like, bro, insane, right? Insane. But anyway, losing access to Pokemon Bank means you lose access to the Pokemon either from Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald or from Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, and you can't bring them over to Pokemon Home anymore, right? But Pokemon will sell you the solution to that, okay? Now, you might not be able to get your old Pokemon from 2003, but who cares about those? You can get new Pokemon through a new playthrough of Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald on the Nintendo Switch eShop. That's right, folks. Just like with FireRed and LeafGreen, data miners revealed, and this was basically revealed all the way back when FireRed and LeafGreen came out on the Switch, but basically it was confirmed in the code that the emulator that the FireRed and LeafGreen was running on inside the Switch had references to Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, right? And so right there in the code, people knew, like, okay, yeah, the Emerald is coming, Ruby, Sapphire, they're coming. Eventually they're going to be brought to the eShop just like FireRed and LeafGreen, and so you'll get to buy them again, folks. Fantastic, right? I'm so happy about that. I got Emerald right here. Okay, I can transfer my Pokemon right now today for 0 extra money. But once Pokemon Bank gets shut down, I'll lose that option, and if I want to get Pokemon from Emerald again, I'm gonna have to buy it again, and I gotta buy it digitally this time. Amazing, right? Oh my god, I love the digital future we're moving into. This is super cool. I'm losing support for the physical game I have right here, and if I want to move Pokemon from Emerald in the future, well, great news, I gotta spend another 20 bucks or whatever they're gonna charge, right? I would not be surprised. I'm calling it right now. Okay, FireRed, LeafGreen, those are 20 bucks. I think Ruby and Sapphire are gonna be 20 bucks, and then Emerald's gonna be 25. They're just gonna do something scummy like that. They're gonna be like, okay, fine, there's no reason to play Ruby and Sapphire. Emerald's the superior copy. Everyone knows that, right? So everyone's gonna buy Emerald. Okay, fine, buy Emerald, but it's a $5 upcharge, right? They're gonna do it. Oh, I know they're gonna do it. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. Or they're gonna bundle them all together or something ridiculous like that. You'll get all 3 for 50 bucks or something. I don't know. They're gonna fleece you guys. It's gonna happen, okay? But anyway, like I said, these leaks, these rumors, it's all but confirmed. These games are coming to the Switch. Everyone knows it. They made so much money with FireRed, LeafGreen. They literally printed millions of dollars off of people that just, for whatever reason, like, they want to play an inferior version of FireRed, LeafGreen, bro. Like, I don't understand it. You can play it with save states. You can play it fast forward. There's I can AirPlay it on my television. There's better ways to play these games, but people spend 20 bucks on them anyway. But either way, my point is, these games are coming. Everyone knows it. They're gonna sell you the solution, okay? Yes, you'll lose the ability to move your own Pokemon from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald that you already have, but you'll be able to buy a digital copy on the Switch, and now you'll have to play through the game again, right? And you won't get your old Pokemon, but you'll get new Pokemon, and then those are the ones you can move to Pokemon Home. All right, so this is all planned. They know what they're doing. The timeline makes sense. And look, if you want to spend 20 bucks and replay through the Gen 3 games, that's fine, okay? They're fantastic games. They're fan favorites. Everyone loves them. The problem isn't even that you have to rebuy the game, okay? The problem is that we're moving from a system that supports physical cartridges to a system that relies on digital downloads on your console. And one of the problems with that is what we already see with the 3DS, because if you bought back in the day red, blue, yellow, or gold, silver, crystal, that's fine as long as your 3DS doesn't get lost or stolen or doesn't get liquid damage or the battery explodes or whatever happens to it, right? A million things can happen to actual hardware, and once that happens, then you lose your purchase, right? Then you can't get those games back because it's a one-time thing. The eShop is shut down, the servers are shut down, it's over, right? And so we're just redoing that again for the Switch, right? And the future is going to be, it's the same, right? It's going to be the exact same outcome. Eventually the Switch eShop will shut down. Everyone knows that's going to be the case. At some point they're going to shut it down, and then you won't be able to buy these games again, and then eventually the servers are going to get shut down, and then you won't be able to re-download the games even if you have the system and you bought them in the past and you're able to log in, right? Whereas right now we've got a permanent, semi-permanent solution in the form of cartridges, right? Now of course you can lose them, they could get damaged or whatever the case might be, but this is the same issue we're having with Sony and their diskless future, right? We're going from a physical system to a digital system, and it's like one day the FireRed, LeafGreen that you purchased this year will be gone forever, and it's not even up to you. It's not your choice. It's just going to happen, right? They're going to turn the servers off. They're not going to be able to verify your purchase, or your Switch is going to die and you're going to have to get a new Switch, and then boom, you can't re-download it because servers are gone. At some point you'll lose access to that copy, right? And I, in my nursing home, will still have my starters from my original Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald playthroughs on the bus from 2003. Okay, that's the difference between physical and digital media, and we're going deeper and deeper towards digital, even though it's worse for longevity. And as I'm saying here, you're gonna have to keep rebuying the same shit, whereas I can still play the same copies, right? And look, I'm about a day late to this news, and it's not because I wasn't paying attention. I actually saw this news break yesterday. I was on Twitter when it happened. Like, literally as it happened, I was like, oh wow, that's crazy, right? And I didn't want to make this video, and the reason that I didn't want to make this video, there's a couple of them. First of all, my knee-jerk reaction was like, okay, 13-year-old service gets shut down, what else is new, right? I mean, I've been banging on this drum for months now. Like, digital media and these online servers, they get shut down. It happens all the time. That is the precedent. It continues to happen. It will continue to happen. So this is not surprising, right? It's just another cog in the wheel. It's just business as usual. What's the big deal, right? That was kind of my knee-jerk reaction. The second thing that I thought was the Pokemon fan base kind of deserves bad things to happen to them. And I know that sounds mean, right? Like, I am a Pokemon fan, right? I've made my pilgrimage to Japan. I've been to Tokyo. I've been to Kyoto. I've been to multiple Pokemon centers. While I was in Japan, I bought complete or nearly complete in-box copies of yellow and silver version. Okay, the only thing they're missing are the maps, which is unfortunate, but either way, I love Pokemon. Okay, I am a fan, but the fan base does kind of deserve bad things to happen to them, because not only have they been accepting mediocrity, and in some cases games even worse than mediocre like Legends EA, not only do they accept it, they continue to buy it, and they defend it, and they defend it in the most toxic way possible. And in some instances, they even lash out and attack other franchises, like people who enjoy Palworld, for example. They'll try to tear that fan base down. And so the Pokemon fan base is their own worst enemy. And so when bad things happen to them, they do deserve it, right? I mean, like, these are the consequences of your own actions. And so I don't feel bad at all that, you know, you're losing this super important link to preserve your Pokemon from the last 20 years. Good, you deserve it, right? You've paid with your wallets, you have voted with your dollars, and that subpar level of below mediocrity that you've been financially supporting for the better part of a decade now, right? Because let's be honest, Pokemon has not been good since the Switch came out. Okay, like the last decent games maybe were Sword and Shield, but realistically it was like Sun and Moon and earlier, right? Especially, like I said, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, fantastic games, right? So by accepting this mediocrity and going above and beyond and defending it, you deserve when bad things happen to you. Okay, but beyond that, I already know that in the comments of this video, the Pokemon fans are going to bend over backwards to try to defend this maneuver, and they're going to justify this behavior, and they're going to make excuses for Pokemon and Game Freak as to why this is a good thing, right? It's a good thing they're shutting down this service. It's a good thing you're going to get to pay again to play Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, just like you did with FireRed, LeafGreen, right? Like, they're going to go out of their way to pretend like this is a good thing. And so I didn't want to make this video because it's like, man, not only do they deserve it, they don't even know they're eating a turd sandwich. Pokemon and Nintendo and Game Freak, they told them it was a brownie, and so they're oh, okay, well, this tastes really bad, but they said it's a brownie, so it's a brownie. Leave the multi-billion-dollar company alone. And so I just get frustrated when we talk about these different Pokemon topics, because it's like the community is just so undeserving of even attention, right? Like, they're half of them belong in a straitjacket, if we're being honest, right? Like, they're actually insane. For zero paycheck, they're coming to the defense of a multi-billion-dollar company that's making their own experience worse, and they're just telling them that it's better, and they're just believing it, right? They're just believing it, opening up their wallet, and just supporting the decline financially, right? And so it's like, man, like, I didn't even really want to talk about this, because I know that for a lot of the Pokemon community, this is just going to fall on deaf ears, right? They're convinced this is a good thing. And so why am I even talking about it? The reason that I ultimately decided to make a video about it is because I do find it a little bit shocking that, again, there's an irony here, right? It's the gotta catch 'em all catchphrase that's been around for 30 years, okay? And then, okay, all the Pokemon that you caught, we told you to collect them, and we told them they're your friends. They're more than just data on a cartridge, right? And now it's like, yeah, we're actually deleting them. In February of 2027, we're literally deleting your Pokemon. Yeah, they're your friends, and we're pressing the red button, and it's over, right? So act now, okay? And then move them all over, and then you gotta pay for subscription subscription services. You're gonna have to pay for FireRed and LeafGreen again. You're gonna pay for Ruby Sapphire Emerald again. Like, it's just crazy, right? And so I wanted to make the video kind of just talking about the absurdity of all of this and how this whole thing kind of contradicts the very foundation of Pokemon, right? And the precedent that they've set for like 20 years, that being that with each new generation since Gen 3, you can move your Pokemon up to the next, right? And they're ending that now without any sort of solution, without any sort of alternative. And that's kind of crazy. It's kind of sad, right? Because again, I'm a Pokemon fan. I stopped after I beat Scarlet and Violet because I'd rather go to the dentist every day for a week than play that game for every day for a week. I'm not even kidding you, genuinely. Like, I beat those games purely so I can make videos like this telling you, yup, those are trash. I know what I'm talking about because I've spent, I don't know, probably 50-60 hours in Scarlet, right? Like, I know firsthand those games suck compared to what the games used to be. And it's not nostalgia. I just played through Soul Silver like 2 months ago, okay? I just played through FireRed and LeafGreen back in like March. The old games are good. They're genuinely good. And the new games suck, okay? And so Scarlet and Violet kind of burned me, and I didn't buy Legends EA because that, I mean, you just take one look at it. I can recognize a turd by looking at a picture, right? I don't gotta smell it, all right? I don't gotta take a little lick, okay? I know a turd when I see one, okay? And so it's like, I don't need to play the game to know it's bad. I just look at it. You just look at it with your eyes. That's the crazy part. People are like, oh, you didn't even play it. It's like, are you unable to make a value judgment by looking at something? Like, your life has got to be really hard if you have to firsthand experience every possible, it's overwhelming. Like, hey, there's poison ivy over there. Like, probably don't go over there. Well, how do you know? Well, I don't know. I just looked at it, but it looks like poison ivy. It's like, sure, well, watch this. And you rub it on your arm and then you start huge rash, right? It's like, some things are just obvious, right? Like, that's the power of the human brain, is we can extrapolate things out logically and we just know, right? You can just know. And so with Legends, yeah, I didn't even bother, right? Like, they don't deserve my money because not only did the last, 5 games in the franchise suck, but this one looks even worse, not getting it, right? They don't deserve my money. So I am a fan of Pokemon, but I'm a fan of what Pokemon used to be. And I'm also a fan of what it could be today. There is potential there. There still is, the DNA is still great. The bones, the foundation, the franchise, the character designs, the history, right? Like, it can be great. It really can, but they haven't put any effort in for like, what is it, probably 10 years at this point, right? And so that part of me is sad, okay? That part of me that remembers using Pokemon Bank, that part of me that remembers when Pokemon Home first came out and moving my Pokemon up through older games, like, that's the part of me that's sad about this news. And part of the reason why I wanted to ultimately decided to make this video is because I did want to talk about it, because deep down I am still a Pokemon fan. It does still bother me that things like this are happening. And also, just so we're clear, okay, this is gonna sound insane, all Pokemon on Pokemon Bank right now, all the data combined, all of it, every Pokemon of every player on Pokemon Bank in the entire world can probably fit on a 3 terabyte, if not a 2 terabyte hard drive. Okay, so when we think about like, okay, it's a 13-year-old service, like, what are we doing still supporting it? It's like, well, on the flip side, it's like, I could fit everyone's Pokemon on my computer in my room 4 times over. And so actually it costs basically nothing to keep it running. And we're talking about the most valuable entertainment franchise in human history. At that point, why not leave it on, right? Like, Pokemon as a franchise makes enough money to cover the server costs of Pokemon Bank every like 15 minutes, I bet, for a whole year, right? Like, the amount of packs they sell, the amount of merch they sell, the games, the microtransactions, like, they cover the server costs of Pokemon Bank, if not every 15 minutes, at least in a day, right? At least in a day. It is virtually $0 for them. It's a rounding error on a weekly basis, not even a quarterly basis, right? So the flip side of that is like, okay, yeah, it's been up forever, but it's like, who cares? Who's it hurting? It doesn't really cost you anything, right? And it's not like Pokemon are video files. They're little bytes of data. Like, it's fractions of gigabytes for a single player. You know what I mean? And so even if there is 50 million players out there using Pokemon Bank, which there's not, by the way, it all fits in a 3 terabyte hard drive. You know what I mean? So it's like, the whole thing is just absurd. Okay, the whole thing is just absurd. And that's why I decided that even though I didn't really care to make a video about this this topic initially, I do think it's important to talk about. I wanted to throw my 2 cents in there and just be like, look, here's what's happening. Okay, Pokemon's going more digital. Okay, objectively, we're going from a system that uses cartridges to one where you're gonna have to buy Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald on the eShop digitally, right? We're moving in the digital direction for Pokemon. Your old Pokemon that are stuck on bank that you didn't transfer off, they're getting deleted, right, on in February. And it just kind of sucks because it wouldn't really cost them anything to leave it there, really. I mean, what are we talking about? Barely anyone even uses it anyway. So I wanted to give you guys my 2 cents. That's just how I feel about this, but you guys can let me know in the comments what you think about this situation. And I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of diehard Pokemon fans down there white knighting for their favorite multi-billion-dollar corporation, even though they don't give a shit about them, right? You're just a pay pig to them. That's all you are. They don't care about you. They're probably going to flood the comments. Okay, so while you're down there, consider dropping a thumbs up on the video, especially if you made it all the way to the end, because it really helps out the channel a ton. It's going to help me fight off those toxic Pokemon players and help get this video into the YouTube algorithm. And you might think you're subscribed to the channel because you've seen a lot of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below.